Hey there, my name is Przemek, and today I've got two reviews for you. One of EP by project Third Eye of the Crone, and it's called Through Doorways of Stone, and the second by a collaborative album from Vortex and Nam-khar, the Sarajevo Spiral. But we begin with a little gem from Great Britain. A short EP from a project I've never heard of before, Third Eye of the Crone, Through Doorways of Stone. I don't know much about this project. On Bandcamp, I see there's only one other release, also a short EP from the Tomb. But today let's focus on Through Doorways of Stone. 4 songs: Dimensions of Gold, The All, A Lake of Unknowing, and Crown of Vermilion. It's available in digital form, but also on a cassette released in a small number of copies by appropriately named label Small Offerings. And this EP enchanted me from a very first listen. I would say after Falgar and Sun Vessel, this is another relatively young project in a generally speaking neo-dark folk, which makes me like this genre again after years of being tired of this type of music. However, while Sun Vessel refers to classics like Death in June or Of the Want and the Moon, Third Eye of the Crone is closer to the British form of the genre, heavily saturated with psychedelia from the 70s. This man, the man behind the Third Eye of the Crone, has a fantastic talent for great melodies. All 4 songs are immediately catchy, but without being cheap or using easy tricks, without pandering to the listener. And I feel so strongly that this is music that could only be created on the British Islands. In fact, after listening to this EP, the first thing I did was to check if Third Eye of the Crone had appeared on any part of this Cold Spring Dark Britannica series. Well, they didn't, but that doesn't matter. You listen to this and immediately think of The Wicker Man, some secluded island where time moves at its own pace, where people live in harmony with nature and simply and effectively driving away the specter of civilization. There is a bit of Current 93 from their acoustic apocalyptic folk period, a bit of In Gowan Ring or Birch Book, also a bit of The Hare and the Moon, the project we have always liked at Santa Sangre. But above all, great craftsmanship, very pleasant sound, excellent voice of the singer, which is gentle but strong. You know what? Now when I think of it, for me, this man right away jumps into the top of the best vocalists on the neo-dark psych folk scene. It's delicate and powerful at the same time. It's never out of tune, like often Tony Wakeford is on Sol Invictus albums. I've listened to this previous EP of the project, the one I mentioned from the Tomb, and the progress is colossal, both in the number of means of expression used, the instruments, in the sound, but above all in the smoothness of compositions, which are enjoyable but not trivial. Like I say, there was once a German band called Empyreum which recorded a folk black metal album, a classic in some circles, but not for me, really not for me. But I always liked the title of this album, and sometimes I borrow it to describe this specific kind of music, and it fits very well here. It's songs of moors and misty fields, but also these are songs of seaside villages and lakes which surface shines with moonlight. It's a short one. In total, it lasts less than 15 minutes. Inconspicuous but very charming gem from the British Isles. Check it out and give this project some love because it really deserves it, and I'm really hoping for a full album one day. Third Eye of the Crone, Through Doorways of Stone. Okay, and the second one I would like to talk about today is the collaboration between Vortex and Nam-khar, the Sarajevo Spiral. And after Nakhamadi, released by Winterlight, it's another collaboration between the German project Vortex and the German-Greek-Polish collective Nam-khar. This time it takes us to the turbulent times of the early 20th century, just before the outbreak of World War I, or the Great War, as many people call it. This time it is a collaborative effort of two labels also, Zazen Sounds from Greece and Cyclic Low. And let me first read an excerpt from the press note. In his 1915 work, Thoughts for the Times on War and Death, Sigmund Freud wrote about World War I, which began with an assassination in Sarajevo. We cannot but feel that no event has ever destroyed so much that is precious in the common possessions of humanity, confused so many of the clearest intelligences, or so thoroughly debased what is highest. Probably, however, our sense of these immediate evils is disproportionately strong, and we are not entitled to compare them with the evils of other times which we have not experienced. Nam-khar and Vortex base their musical reflections on the idea that we are now at the closure of a historical circle, 1 century later. The Sarajevo Spiral is about the past, the present, and the eternal return of fate. It is a multi-layered gaze into the abyss, a distorted sketch of the human condition. In fact, both projects are rather associated with ritual forms of dark ambient, especially Nam-khar, because Vortex also tried other sounds in the past, soundtracks, cinematic, etc. On the Sarajevo Spiral, the concept itself is forced the musicians to approach the creative process differently, because it is a touch of tangible history, not so very distant and close to us, to Western people, Western civilization. 1914, Sarajevo, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand by Gavrilo Princip, a student from Serbia. We all know that was the flashpoint of the war, but also it was also just a trigger, as it was just a final effect of a combination of various events that led to this assassination, and as a result the outbreak of war, because the tension between various countries was already growing months or years earlier. It is obvious that typically ritual sounds, the ones Nam-khar has been specializing in, wouldn't be the right option on the Sarajevo Spiral. So, like I said, they took a different approach, step out of their comfort zone, and they did it perfectly. I mean, I can't precisely define which sounds belong to Vortex and which to Nam-khar, but I evaluate the album as a whole, and I assume that the contribution of both projects is more or less 50% each. Because, you know, in Vortex case, I was sure they would handle this kind of concept properly, also bearing in mind Markus Stiegler's previous project, Golgotha. However, after listening to Sarajevo Spiral, I can 100% say that Nam-khar also can easily handle atmospheres other than Eastern esoteric themes, a category they were up to this day associated with most often. And I mentioned Golgotha for a reason, because the album somewhat refers to the music on Markus' earlier project, especially the album Seven Pillars. It is not the same, of course. Seven Pillars was more cinematic, illustrative, and bombastic. After all, it was like a musical biography of Thomas Lawrence, a kind of bridge between this album and Lawrence of Arabia, David Lean's classic, of course, keeping all proportions. The Sarajevo Spiral sometimes comes close to that album in its atmosphere, but musically it is less varied, without elements neo-folk or neo-classical. It is dark ambient with a martial touch, and it's not really a musical illustration of specific historical events, but rather a reflection of the state of mind of the European people or society of that time. And after a short intro, we hear Parabellum, which, thanks to the German spoken word and atmospheric synth passages, reminds me of Die Schlangenkönigin, the album by His Divine Grace, but the following compositions are rather based on eerie drones, which, as living and breathing, give the impression of grey clouds of smoke and ash that spread over Europe and in the minds of people terrified of impending destruction. And the rhythmic parts, which are far from esoteric ceremonies, but they are rather an image of an arms race, I would say, a race to see who will be the quickest to develop new sophisticated ways of inflicting death and destruction. After all, it was the first conflict that could be described as modern warfare: tanks, planes, industry, and technology in the service of war. And it cannot be denied that both projects approached the topic seriously, offering a very suggestive vision of what once was. But I think that at some level, the Sarajevo Spiral can also be treated as a line connecting the events of 110 years ago with what is currently happening in the world, where the situation is also very unstable, and who knows, maybe one trigger like Franz Ferdinand's assassination would be enough to raise another global conflict. And I would also say that I would also like this album to be perceived as a kind of appeal to people to come to their senses before it's too late. Sure, globally speaking, just a handful of people will listen to this album, a tiny fraction, and I assume none of these who are most responsible for the situation in the world will ever be interested in the Sarajevo Spiral by Vortex and Nam-khar. But you know how this old saying goes, constant dropping wears away a stone, and if the album gives at least one person food for thoughts, I think then it could be considered as a success by the artists, especially since musically it's also a really, really good thing. Vortex and Nam-khar, the Sarajevo Spiral. Okay, that would be it for today. Thanks for watching and see you soon.